I am going to call the meeting of the Willits City Council of February 14th to order at 6:30. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Let us start with the pledge to the flag. And Larry, would you lead us?
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
And Dolores, would you do the honors for the roll call, please?
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Stransky.
Yes.
Ornstein.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Mayor Shaw.
Here, thank you. So, public communications, I'm going to do it off of here, it's easier. Council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, if there's a large group of persons on the same subject matter, we may request that one spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item for public communications is limited to matters that are under the jurisdiction of the city, but which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the city council, commissions, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited. In other words, it is allowed, and no action can be taken on items that were not agendized. So is there anybody here who would like to speak to us? And if so, please come forward and sign your name. Yes. It helps if you sign your name. It's not the law, but it's helpful. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Plaza. You guys are very well aware of who I am. I've resided at 143 Franklin Avenue since 2014 when I bought the property. I would never be in here one time speaking about anything that has been happening to me. I'd like to have an investigation of the Ethics Commission to investigate what's been going on here in our town. You are not aware, but some on the panel, Gonzalez knows, Stransky knows, Ornstein knows. And you might even know, Madge, now that you're mayor. I'm asking that there be an investigation of an ethics commission. Investigation for ethics violation here in our town. Within the police department with Gonzalez. I was held at gunpoint in 2015, November 6th. Priscilla Tarver called Chief Gonzalez on that very day, November 6th, said this is unacceptable that I be held at gunpoint on my property while Bill Schaefer, who is a very dangerous man now to this very day, his son was inside my property, trespassing inside my property, and you guys are not aware of what Mr. Schaefer had done with Sergeant McNally. Sergeant McNally had his gun drawn before I came to the property, front of my property. I was terrified. I am still terrified of Bill Schaefer, and I'd like to put you all on notice that Mr. Schaefer is a dangerous man. You all know him. He's an old-time man here in this town. I bought the biggest property in this town, and he's trying to run me off. And Mr. Sherman, the good old Mr. Sherman, code enforcer, has been trespassing on my property since 2015. Witnesses seen it, but nobody will violate him. Complain about it. I'm very sorry that I get upset, but this has been going on too long. I'm a survivor of a serious injury. I was a cement driver here in town. The only female driver that was driving in this town. I am proud of who I am. My mom graduated from here. But an ethics investigation is very needed. They are traumatizing me all the time. We have just seen on TV a killing in a school. And I cannot go to my police department and feel safe anymore. They have hidden all kinds of paperwork to keep me from getting it. I've asked from 2015 to give me this information. I'd like you all to be put on notice now, on public notice, that Bill Schaefer is a very dangerous man, and he needs to be investigated because he has surveillance cameras on me and giving Mr. Sherman video of roosters over on Della with the video, audio. He's listening to every move I make on my property, which is a violation of my pride, of my civil rights. You are all running this under the rug, and I hold him responsible. Gonzalez knows exactly what's been going on. He's profiled me in the past to cover Bill Schaefer. And you all know who Bill Schaefer is because Mr. King knows who he is too. Adrian Moore also knows. We had to try and get it investigated way back then. She would never touch it. And I'm asking you, Madge, now that you're mayor, I'd like an ethics investigation for the city of Willits establishment. And also, since when do we put on smart meters for our water? I don't have no water hookup pipeline to my water yet, but I went down and had it put in my name. And then I get a 12,716 gallons in 1 month with no pipe connected to my water meter. Mr. Schaefer messed with my water meter. I called it 2016. It's a violation. It's a federal law for Schaefer to be messing with my water meter. And Sherman told me this year to call the police because it's a violation. I did. I called them back in 2016. Nothing's been happening. I want to be protected too. I came down on May 25th last year to get my permit to build my house. My dog was poisoned by Bill Schaefer. He's a service dog I had for over 11 years because I could not walk or talk. You men need to get out of this good guy gang, okay? Stand up for all of us. I am a homeowner, a property owner who pays taxes. I do not call you all up and curse at you all, but I'm agitated right now because you guys are allowing it. I want to stand in this town where my mama walked and raise my head up high. I am not a homeless person. I am not a bag lady, okay? Mr. Gonzalez, I'm addressing this to you because you knew that and you profiled me. I've been called a 5150 in this town by Doug Brown in the Burger King trying to get my house built. You know exactly what the good boy gang is all about. I think this ethics investigation needs to be investigated as this establishment, 12,716 gallons of water in 1 month, and I'm supposed to pay for that and I don't even have a hookup PVC pipe. Tell me, how can I get an ethics investigation on the establishment meeting here from 2014 to 2018? He needs to be charged for trespassing on my property without calling me. And my vehicles get vandalized after he left. 2016, when he went on his medical leave. I have witnesses that seen me be held at gunpoint when I was way out and about.
Okay, so, yeah, I think you're 3 minutes.
I'm done.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I need an investigation on this. It's gone too long.
I hear you.
Really?
Yes. I'm.
Let me sign the paper right now that you heard me. You put it on the agenda?
Well, it's part of the public record, but I
want
am
it on the
very,
agenda.
I know you've been upset for quite some time, and I would like to look
I'm
into.
an innocent victim here. I am going to get killed by Bill Schaefer next. And I hold you all responsible. Just like when Burton was mayor, he knew what was going on. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public that would like to address the city council? All right, we will move on to our consent calendar. There's no public matters, which are, so we will go to the consent calendar, which includes the council minutes of January 24th, disbursement journals, and a resolution to authorize a code enforcement officer lien on a property for failure to pay fines over a long period of time, actually.
I so move.
Madam Mayor, before taking that action, I'd like to request that we move on item number C and continue it to another date. Allow us to have some more discussion between ourselves and the property owner.
That's great. Okay, I'm glad to hear that there's possibility there. So we were removing item C, so it'll just be the council minutes and the disbursement journals. And you
I'll so move. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Okay. Any comments from the public?
Yeah, I'm here for the 1253 Magnolia. I think that's what you were talking about.
Yes, and the city manager has just said that we're going to not approve that this meeting. We're going to postpone action to allow more discussion with the staff. If you wanted to address it anyway, I think it would be okay.
Yeah.
But we're not going to take action tonight, though.
That's fine.
Want to come forth?
Yeah.
And do sign the
Sign
sign in if you would. Thank you.
Hi. So, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jorge Brito Rein, and I'm the one that lives at the 1253 Magnolia Street.
Yes.
And yeah, I did not pay that fine. The first notice I got, it was under a different name. I didn't take action. It was under Jorge Nieto, which I don't know who that is. And Jorge Nieto Arreguin or something like that. And I didn't take action. And then I got the letter right after I got back from a trip. I wasn't here. I have my passport, which shows that I wasn't here. Every time I leave and come back, it gets stamped.
Yeah.
So I wasn't here for that. I just got back from another trip to Mexico yesterday, and when I got home, that's when I received this other letter saying that I had this going on, so good thing I came in a day earlier, but yeah. So all I want to know is where I can go ahead and pay this, and if I can get like payment plans or whatever, or I'll just get it over and pay it.
So, yes.
Madam Mayor, I think it would be appropriate, as I mentioned, be glad to set up an appointment with him to meet and discuss that very topic.
All right, this is where you can go to,
Okay.
to try to resolve that, and
So-
I don't know, the particulars. You can go
City
look it up.
manager office right here, just feel free to come in and
Here
make.
at the top one too?
No, downstairs,
Downstairs?
yes.
Okay, and when can I do that?
You'll have to come in and make an appointment at the window,
Okay,
all right?
all right,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments from the council or from the public? Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on. Informational reports include the building inspection activity and the business license activity reports. There is an item here that any persons who are dissatisfied with decisions of city council have the right to appeal, to review that decision by court. There's a section that we've adopted and generally limits it to 90 days. And that's really, doesn't happen too often. Commissions and agencies, authorities, none tonight. City manager report, so. City
Yes,
manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just a few things to report on. As you know, we're scheduling the rent stabilization discussion for the next meeting. I expect the staff report will be completed and released with that next agenda, so that will in fact be scheduled for February 28th. We are, relative to the mid-year review, we are running a bit behind with that, and we're waiting to get some final figures before we can actually submit the report to the council on the various different funds. This is an important report because it will update the council and the community on where we are today in revenues versus expenditures for all of our major funds. It is quite possible that we'll have that material available for the meeting as well on the 28th. I know the 28th may go quite long, so I think we'll list it on the agenda, and then the council can make a determination as to once we've dealt with the rent stabilization item, whether they want to move forward at that time with the mid-year review. Finally, I want two more things quickly. I wanted to let you know, too, that it is at this point my plan to, along with the city attorney, to bring back an initial discussion regarding the excise tax on marijuana on the first meeting in March. And finally, just a reminder that Monday is President's Day. President's Day is a holiday, so all of the city offices will be closed on that day.
That's it?
That's it.
Great. So, other administration reports, do we have anything from the city clerk?
As you'll note, our city clerk, human resources director, planning director, et cetera, are all out attending a training to this meeting, so there won't be any of those reports.
But Dolores is sitting in for our city clerk. Thank you for doing that, Dolores. Finance and we're going to be next meeting.
Right, public safety you have here.
Yes, I'm getting there. Human resources, nothing to report, I guess. And legal. Okay. You are still working on it, well, obviously, you just
Yes.
the excise tax.
Yes, quite a lot.
Okay, public safety.
I'll make up for the lack of other reports.
Yeah, been busy.
So as everyone knows, there was an officer-involved shooting with the Sheriff's Department, and Willits Police Department officers were involved. The only thing I'm going to address for that is the staffing levels because of that. County protocol requires that all officers that could be involved in a shooting, they're on administrative leave until the investigation is complete and they're cleared to come back to work. So because of that, we started with 6 officers and sergeants, and we're 2 of the officers / sergeants are on administrative leave right now, so that leaves us with 4. So our officers are working 2, we have minimum staffing of 2, so they're on day shift, 2 of them, and 2 of them are on night shift. One of the sergeants is currently on his 20th day straight working. So we're trying to get relief. We have some reserves that have volunteered to come in and do some relief for that. We expect the staffing to be up by the end of next week. We expect those officers to be back to work. The Mendocino County District Attorney's Office is investigating the incident. And we have 3 trainees, and they're not allowed to be considered officers right now. They're still with some field training officers. Because of the shortage too, we're not allowing any ride-alongs right now. They might make an exception for the mayor, but because they have the trainees with them and there's only 4 of them. So I wanted to, I intend every month to give some statistics of some sort of what the police department is doing, and I'm trying to make it brief. Currently, from January 1st to actually this morning, we had 1,346 calls for service and 61 arrests. And for some reason, we have really increased over last year. Over last year, to this date, there was 918 calls for service. So that's over 400, up over 400. And we've tried to figure out why, and we think part of it has to do with possibly new laws in California, but also the weather has been better this time of the year than it was last year. So that could have something to do with it too. And last year there was 43 arrests to date, and like I said, there's 61 to date now. To give you an idea, I randomly picked, or I comparing this to the sheriff's office, and I randomly picked Napa PD, because we kind of compare with them a lot, even though they have an 80,000 population and they have 74 officers. But to compare, per officer or per deputy, the sheriff's office had 86 calls for service per deputy. Napa PD had 100 per officer, and Willits PD had 224 per officer. As far as arrests, the sheriff's office had 3.5 arrests per deputy. Napa PD had 5 arrests per officer, and Willits PD had 10 per officer. We had a dispatcher give a 4-month notice, so we're going to be recruiting for a new dispatch position. So if anybody's interested, we'll be taking applications shortly. All right.
I have a question. I heard a rumor that there was a second incident later.
No,
in
not
the-
that I'm aware of.
No, and it wasn't as serious an incident, but apparently, no?
Not that I'm aware of.
Maybe it was outside the city's,
There's been lots of rumors, I wouldn't
Okay.
want to.
Yeah, this was an assist to the sheriff's department that was in a pursuit.
right,
And I'm not aware of any incident subsequent to that.
okay.
Before you sit down, this is your first public meeting since you've been back, and I just want to publicly welcome you back. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. My hair's gray now, it used to be dark.
Aren't we all?
Any questions for anyone? All right. Thank you.
And community development, obviously Dusty is not here, but John Sherman, do you have any report for us?
Actually, not much to report. Been busy with code enforcement, but it's been the regular kind of stuff. We are getting actually quite, I think the weather mentioned by Scott here is helping, but we've got a lot of people out cleaning up yards and doing the kind of work that sometimes it takes a lot of effort to get them to do. It seems like I'm getting a lot of cooperation this season, so I'm real pleased, and I want to thank the public for that. Building, we don't have anything big coming in right now. We're on the cusp of completing the construction in a couple of the cannabis facilities, so we'll probably be 2 months or so away from issuing operational permits for that. But the rest of them are still under construction or still in the permit process.
Jerry?
John, the restaurant up here at the north end, the Old Vassars, is that anytime soon slated to open?
He's getting close. He's getting close. Last time I talked to him, he was simply waiting to get the text panels for his signs. So, and honestly, the place is gorgeous inside. It's just, the guy's done as good a job as I could imagine him doing. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing what his food's like.
And this is going to be a Mexican restaurant?
Yeah.
Anything on the old Carlson apartments? The old apartments across from the post office? Has there been anything?
You know something?
Anything to report?
I'm about to issue a demolition permit for the Carlson Apartments.
I had heard through the grapevine, so I
Yeah.
wanted to get confirmation.
And really more good news is that we're almost completed moving the antennas off the old Willits Cafe, and that's the last step to take before we go for demolishing the Willits Cafe.
I thought that was going to start, actually, I think it was last week. Did that get postponed, or?
I didn't understand what you said.
The old Willits Cafe, I thought that was going to happen last week. Did that get postponed, or are we close to starting
Yeah, there was a
demolition?
problem moving the antennas, and until the
okay.
antennas get moved, that's InstaWave's distribution for their internet system, and so any interruption there would be interruption in internet service around town. So we're real careful. At this point, we want to cross all our Ts and dot all our Is before we take that final move and actually take the building down.
What about the Remco site? I know we've asked a couple times, but we still haven't heard anything. Do you have any changes? Has anything changed there?
You know, I just heard some
Nothing?
rumors.
Okay.
Not much. There was it looks like maybe they are starting to rent. I did get an inquiry from a potential tenant, but there's a little bit of a conflict with As you know, Franklin Avenue is a 6,000-pound load limit at this point. And so getting commercial vehicles in and out of the north side of Remco is kind of difficult because of that. And it's thrown up a little bit of a block, but I see some action coming on that front too.
Is that the load limit for the entire street, or because I'm sure there's heavy loads at the west end of Franklin Street?
No, only between Main Street and Blosser.
The restriction.
Okay.
The restriction is only between Main Street and Blosser.
And I wanted to, again, thank you for all the work you did on the flood maps and getting that straightened out.
Well, thank you. We're getting there.
All right. Barbara, it has to be very short.
Yes, I would like to make a comment on, I live on Franklin, and I see diesel trucks come down there with log trucks. I see all kinds of heavy not logging trucks, but two big diesel trucks coming down that road there. That's more than 6,000 pounds.
Okay.
I know, I'm a diesel truck driver.
Okay. We'll have him.
Well, the police department will do some extra patrol.
Oh, no, they won't.
Okay.
They won't implement nothing on that.
Okay, then we won't.
You alerted them to it. Thank
I
you.
learned them to it, but they won't do nothing.
Well, he said he would.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on. Public Works and Engineering.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will give this staff report. I'm going to recommend that the council authorize the city to move forward with the bidding process for the Willits Pavement Preservation Program. And to describe what that program is, essentially it is a what they call slurry sealing and crack filling and sealing project that will take place on several streets throughout the community. Those streets that will be included are East Valley from Main Street to the county line, East San Francisco, Holly Street, School Street, and Pine Street between Maple and Coast Streets. This is really a preservation project. What it will be focused, and the reason it's focused on these particular streets is that what will take place is the treatment will allow for the extension of these streets' life, and that's very critical, that you apply these kinds of treatments, the slurry seal, at a time when the street is expected to begin to deteriorate. That has a way of arresting that deterioration and extends its life, useful life. So for all intents and purposes, it may appear on some of these streets like we're working on streets that don't really need the attention per se, but in all reality, it will help the overall street program for the city. And it's a good use of both the gas tax that the city collects as well as the gas tax that we'll be receiving from the state. These streets have a what is called a pavement condition index of between 70 and 90. Pavement index measures streets in terms of their pavement condition, and they're measured on a scale of 1 to 100. So you see if something's at 70, it would appear to be at the high end. But again, this is the time to really deliver that kind of treatment. That's not to say that we are going to ignore other streets. That's what your capital improvement program is for. And we should be constantly moving ahead with streets that need some rehabilitation as budget permits. I will say that the funding for this project is coming really from two sources. It's SB 1 money, a portion of it. It's the $100,000 that is allocated to the city based on the fact that this city passed a sales tax a number of years ago. So it's like we get an extra cut of that pie. That $100,000 will be matched with $124,000 of the locally collected sales tax dollars to complete a project of $224,000. The timing on this, we're requesting authorization to go out to bid, but the timing is going to take us a little bit. We'll get out to bid as soon as we can verify when those SB1 dollars will be arriving, so that we're not spending the dollars too much in advance of when they'll be reimbursed from the state. Other than that, staff is recommending that you authorize us to proceed with the bidding process. If everything works well, we would have the project under construction by late this spring. And that concludes my staff report. We have engineering staff here to answer any specific questions you may have of them.
So if there's any clarification questions from the council, otherwise I'm going to open the public hearing first. So anybody in the public want to address this item on our agenda? Barbara, please come up.
Is this regarding our infrastructure, our roads and streets?
It's a specific number of streets,
Okay.
yes.
So what I've been hearing through our government is that when we want a certain street, we put a bid in, we get a bid, we put the money aside, and we get a grant for that street, don't we?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, but when we put in the grant, when we put money aside, say, let's say, there was money set aside for Franklin Avenue back in 2013, and Jeremy Decotta, the city civil engineer back then in 2015, told me that there was going to be a grant coming in for Franklin Avenue in 2016. Don't worry about having to do a sidewalk plan, Barbara, because I will talk to John Sherman about it. Well, the grant came in, and I talked to Jeremy, and Jeremy said that money was transferred to some other 4 different streets. So the government is saying that if we specifically go out and apply for a grant money and to match it, that has to go specifically for that street. You can't be taking, because the government will take that money back. He will.
Okay, this is not the same funding source as that one, and I don't know the particulars, but as the city manager has explained, this is a program that allows you to upgrade existing streets that are actually already in fairly good shape to extend their lifetime. And the street you're referring to is under a different
But I'm just saying,
schedule.
money in 2013 was set back aside for specifically that there, for a grant match. Jeremy Decotta told me, don't build my house in 2015. Wait till 2016 because of the grant. It got a match grant of $1.7 million.
Okay.
1.7 million, and Dusty changed it from, because Jeremy Decotta told me that. And he said he has to do what he's told. So you get specific grants, matches for streets, that has to go specifically for what you asked for, not for something else. Not for these 4 streets that Dusty changed on us. So I think that needs to be looked into a little bit more too, where you, a little bit of fraud.
Okay, it's a different item than the one that's before us right now, but it's.
Same similar,
I think
it's a city street in Willits
Well, yeah,
that had money funded for it and
Okay.
spent somewhere else.
all right.
Madam Mayor,
And-
just
yes.
for general clarification, these particular streets, as you've noted, are good candidates for the type of repair that you've suggested annually. And when we come up with the mid-year, you have the capital improvement program. The capital improvement program is a living document. It outlines which streets should be done when and what the funding sources are. And the council does have the opportunity to make changes to that at the appropriate time.
Okay, yes, okay. Yeah, so it is not on the agenda for tonight, but it will be on our capital improvements budget to look at, basically we look at all of the streets and schedule what we can.
Specifically for Franklin.
Yes, and that's something that happened in the past, and I.
No, it cannot be in the past, because you took the money from the past for the future.
Yeah, we're,
Yes.
yeah, it's, okay. Any other comments? And any comments from council members? Larry, and then Jerry.
I'm glad to see this happen. I've just really feel bad that the last block in Pine Street is not being taken care of. And I think as a council that we need to really look at some of these streets that are not 70 and up. And there's a lot of them that are not 70 and up, as you well know better than I. And I don't really know how to say this very nice. When you do this, I'm going to be inundated with the 10 people that are on the block that it's not getting fixed. And I need to have a really good answer for them. So I'm going to have to come and meet with you people. Okay? Thank you.
Jerry?
More of a question, Bob. When I've heard pavement management program, and maybe our engineering folks could answer this, is it a program in the sense of a big picture thing, or do you actually have a computer program that models as far as pavement conditions so that I'm assuming you score a street, and then based on that, you know, it's one of those things where, like Larry says, I mean, I've got some streets in town where people come to me and say, hey, how come we never get any of it? And I've told them we have a pavement management program based on other meetings I've attended, but I'm kind of curious, is there an actual computer model program, or is it an MCOG thing with you guys?
Yeah, so MCOG organized several communities to come together and contribute to developing a pavement management program for these individual communities. They've come out and assessed the city streets and come up with a plan to address those streets. And so we're following the pavement management plan to address these streets that are just beginning to fail. There is a program that you can update when you
I say program, like a computer program?
like a computer program.
Oh, okay.
There is a computer program, but there is a plan, a paper document that goes along with it that provides all the recommendations.
And nothing against you folks, but is this also, I'm assuming MCOG brings in their specialist that also looks at this so that you guys can, I guess, I'm assuming you bring our streets to them and then they go, this doesn't meet, or yeah, it's a bad street, but it's not as bad as this one, and therefore this one scores higher, or, I mean, it's curious about the metrics.
So they hired a consultant to come in and assess the streets and develop this plan and create a street priority list.
Okay.
They rated the streets and they provided recommendations for treatments or rehabilitation based on those conditions.
Okay, and this isn't really a grant per se, this is just putting our money together with the SB1 funds to stretch our funds out, is that correct?
Yeah, this is what they call a formulaic distribution of the SB1 funds, and basically we qualify for it because we voted in the house and sales tax long ago and created a self-help mechanism for the city to pay for our streets.
And the reason I'm making you go through all this is not so much, I think I've kind of got the gist over the past, and I think I get it, but I know that a lot of folks out there in TV land, a lot of folks maybe are under the belief that you come see one of us and we up your score a little bit and maybe you go a little further, but there is a metric and some sort of
Yes, this
study
is
that's
developed from an outside agency that has created the prioritization list.
So it's not politicized.
Yeah, or it's a consultant
Okay.
that's coming.
That's what I wanted
Yeah,
to stress. It's not politicized. It's not a good old boy thing.
No, they base it on the wear and tear on the roads, whether there's alligator conditions showing on the roads,
And alligator
potholes.
would be that whole thing where it starts to split, right?
Yeah, and once a road is showing those conditions, it's beyond this level of treatment. We chose to go after the, to put this project forward with the SB1 funds because it is the easiest project or the most streamlined. It doesn't have all the other requirements for upgrading ADA, which it addresses a problem in our city, but it's the easiest use of these state funds.
And this, slurry seal, but also would there be any grinding or just slurry seal?
This grinds the road, and slurry seals and crack seals where necessary.
And I, like Larry, I agree, I go around Spruce Street off of Pine a lot on my way to, and that is kind of a rough spot, so if we could,
Yeah.
at one point, finish that off someday.
There are a lot of those conditions in town. That one specifically is designated for a water line upgrade. We're trying to address water line upgrades on the west end of town and upgrade 4-inch old steel lines. And so that's part of a 5-year plan, and it's beyond the point of repairing with this type of treatment.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah.
I think not only all 5 of us, but probably everybody in Willits can show us roads that really need to be repaired, and we're just doing it piecemeal as we can, and this is a way to extend the life of some of these existing, not so dire streets in disrepair. So any other council members have any comment or question? If not, we'll have a roll call vote on this.
Do we have a motion?
Oh, yeah, we don't have a motion yet, sorry. Somebody like to make a motion to approve this?
I'll move
I'll
staff's,
Okay. Ron
whatever
moved,
it
Jerry
is.
seconded,
recommendation.
and now we can have a roll call vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Stransky.
Yes.
Bernstein.
Yep.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Strong.
Yeah, yes. Yes, that's fine. I don't know what order it makes. Okay, so that was the entire report for Public Works for now.
Yes, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
So we're going to move on to City Council and Committee reports. League of California Cities.
We have not met. I believe there's a meeting scheduled for March that I'll be attending, I think, in Cloverdale.
Would REMIF come under this or not?
No.
No, okay, so that'll be separate, because that happened. Okay, MCOG?
Yes, I have quite a lengthy report, if it's okay for me to do that.
If it's
Okay.
useful for us to hear it, yes, definitely.
The MCOG, we approved the 2017 Regional Transportation Plan and negative deck for 2017. And it focused on a couple of different things. A second access to brook trails, and B is the brook trails to Willits bike and pedestrian path. And the one thing a council member asked me about that, and so I checked into it. The one thing in the Brook Trails meeting is that they suggested the Willits Creek Trail, and which was the old train bed or whatever at that time. To get any money for any kind of a bike and pedestrian trail, you have to have, the trail has to be seen at all times. In other words, when you come down from Brook Trails, wherever the trail starts, it has to be visible from there all the way to the city of Willits. And
Visible from like a public right-of-way someplace?
no, from a road, or when you're going down the road, you need to be able to see somebody walking on the road. And consequently, this Willits Creek is back into the shrubs and the trees and whatever. So as far as getting a grant for that, we can't do that. So that was passed with the negative deck, and that's the first item that this whole thing needs. And the environmental, all of the environmental things that need to be done is greenhouse gas emission, land use plan, transportation, agriculture and farm resources, aesthetics, air quality, any species, resort of checking for different societies. And I'm sorry, there's a name for it and I can't pronounce it. The soils, to make sure that they're good for earthquake, and the hydrology water. And noise, population, and public service. These are all the things that have to be approved. So they're working on that. The project, the 3 projects that are approved are the Branscombe multi-use bridge over 10 Mile Creek area. That was approved for $137,000. Number 2 was the Port Road rehabilitation, and that is in Ukiah, and that was for $89,832. And the Elm Lane pedestrian ramp improvement for $48,000 for Willits.
Elm Lane.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where that is.
Don't know, I asked and nobody knew, and I didn't know, but it was on there for Willits.
That's great.
Okay,
Madam Mayor?
Yes, let's have that.
Maybe, is that the ADA kind of access down near the wagon wheel? That is putting ADA ramps, et cetera, between wagon wheel and the shopping center, and
okay,
improving that area?
nobody knew, and I didn't know, so,
With
All right.
$48,000 anyway.
yeah.
Okay.
I have a question.
All right, now the charging station was supposed to be approved for Fort Bragg, and one of the council member asked me about that. The state and the county could not approve the charging station because the ADA on the 4% grade for ADA was off by 1%, and so they canceled it. Okay?
Can I ask a clarifying question? So we were supposed to get, I asked you, Larry, we were supposed to get 4 charging stations, and now you're saying that.
The one has to be ADA, and so
Right.
they
So
won't,
is it
they won't
now-
okay the rest of them until all of them are ready to go. And so the one ADA ramp going to the charging station is supposed to be at a 4% grade, and it's off by 1%, and so the whole thing is scrubbed right now. And they're trying to work it out. They'll have to tear it out and redo it, I'm sure.
That's in Fort Bragg.
That's in Fort Bragg.
Yes,
Okay,
and
what
that-
about in Willits?
there's 4 of them, and they're going to be in the Wood Street parking lot. And they're going to be fixed this spring, starting this spring.
Okay, that's what I
Okay.
meant.
And we also had quite a lengthy discussion on elk. I don't know how many people have been to elk. And the number one thing for elk is relocating the radar sign. Is that the Caltrans is going to have to relocate it so it's more visible for people that are coming from the north. Off-street parking, which is something that all of the coastal communities lack. I'll just put it that way, because there isn't any land for that. And insufficient bike and pedestrian in the community is something that is not happening, and so consequently, that's to be worked out. I'll just put it that way. But that's the end of my report. Thank you. Yes?
So I didn't quite understand the first part. What I got was that they approved a 2017 regional plan, and I was unsure as to whether or not there was money allocated or not allocated for.
There is now.
There is money allocated for that pedestrian trail?
No, there
No.
is money. MCOG, along with other people, and there's going to be a meeting here in March, I understand. And,
Of MCOG? An MCOG meeting?
no.
No, a different meeting.
A citizens committee
Okay.
meeting.
Thank you.
And the discussion is going to be the second access and the pedestrian bike, and that's to get it started. But MCOG has gone ahead and started the environmental facts, which I just gave you, to get this off the ground. But Brook Trails is going to have to buy in this time. And that's what it's going to, that's one of the things that are going to be discussed. There's no fund set up for this meeting, just to get going on the second access. But they have committed the time and energy it takes to do all the environmental facts on it. So that won't be something that will be to stymie it. So what has to happen is that you have to have the buy-in from Caltrans for funding, and what has to happen is that you go through the environmental, and if everything works out, and the second access is supported by the Brook Trails people, and the bike pedestrian is approved by the people in Brook Trails, then what happens is you put all your ducks in order and you pick a route. We had 5 routes last time. And the 5 routes, Brook Trails will pick the one that they think is the best, which they've done before. So they should be able to come up with one. Then what happens when everything is all okay and all the documents are, you give it to the state and the state takes it from there. So if there's a block by somebody or some group of people or whatever that you can't go this way, whatever, then the state of California will work on that.
Larry, is this CTC funding that the area would apply for?
No, it comes through MCOG.
Yeah, but the CTC funding coming through, through MCOG, is that what it would be? Or?
I don't know.
Okay.
It could be, but I don't know that.
Because that is not a state highway, I don't know.
What's that?
Brook Trail's second access is not a state highway.
No, it's
issue,
county.
So it's county, but we can use.
There will be
pass-through
funding
funds.
set up for
Pass-through
it, but
funds.
because of the amount of people that live in Brook Trails.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
And the pedestrian and bike would be in conjunction with that new route.
If that's what the people want.
Yeah,
If that's the will of the people.
yes.
And George Ann Krosky has set up that meeting. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it was. I did announce it.
March 5th.
March 5th.
March 5th.
Okay. Thank you.
Any
That-
other thing? Any other questions?
No, you answered them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Good, thorough report. The next item is the EDFC, Economic Development Financing Committee Corporation. They met quite recently, and Heather Gerwitz is now on board full-time as the director of that. And they're getting a lot of housekeeping done, getting the bookkeeping, auditing straightened out, because there was a period of time where they really didn't have that being handled properly, and going after some of the loans that are delinquent, but most of the loans are doing okay, and they are looking for more loan recipients. So if anyone is interested in getting a loan from EDFC, they do have funds available. They are not going to have a meeting in March because of vacation, so the next one will be in April.
With that, since you're doing a report on the EDFC, I would like to ask the mayor to remove me from the EDFC board because I don't want to have a future conflict of interest.
Oh,
So I would ask that.
you don't want to be the alternate either, then?
No, I'd like to resign from the EDFC board. I do not presently have a conflict of interest, but I don't want a future conflict of
I
interest.
see, okay. So I will be, anybody else who is interested in serving, I am serving as the main person right now, but I'd love to have an alternate in case I can't go. So if any of the other council members are interested, please let me know. All right, thank you for that. MSWA, Solid Waste Management Authority, has been having difficulty getting a meeting together. There's been a conflict from too many people. It was going to be tomorrow. It's being rescheduled, so I don't know when that meeting will be. SMTA,
They've not met.
not met. Wow. LAFCO. Who's doing LAFCO?
LAFCO met on February 5th, and I think they were discussed representatives to LAFCO, and obviously I think we're the City Select Committee to hopefully reappoint me as their city representative. We discussed AB 54, requirements for mutual water companies, and they just talked about that. The Leggett Valley Fire Protection District sphere of influence was discussed. Long Valley Fire District sphere of influence was discussed. There were workshops in Piercy Fire Protection District sphere of influence. And we obviously, then there was a work plan. Amongst them, Willits is listed still. Our sphere of influence still needs to be submitted. And so that's kind of the gist of what LEPCO covered.
Finance Committee met, and why don't you, one of you.
I'll be glad to. What we met and we reviewed the status of the mid-year report, which I indicated will be coming forward to you at the end of the month. I also updated, or staff updated, the Finance Committee on the general fund, and things continue to look as if they're improving. We'll get verification of that in the mid-year report, but and to a certain degree it's dependent on getting the next set of sales tax numbers in, which we expect at any time. But it still appears as if our revenue projections are doing a little bit better in the sales tax area, and our expenditures remain about as budgeted. So consequently, we're continuing to project the decrease in the deficit by the end of the fiscal year. In addition to that, we talked about finance director and the fact that we're still working on seeking a finance director, and possibly we'll be looking at the alternative of contracting, preparing an RFP to contract for a finance director. We also talked a bit about the audit, the status of the audit. The audit closeout of the last year is continuing, as I reported to the council before. That is coming along later than we all would have liked, but the closeout of the 16-17 year should be done by March 5th. The auditors will be here, and that means we should be able to get you a draft audit in April. And that will allow you to verify what the year-end totals were from the year before. Finally, in terms of budget preparation, I'm suggesting that obviously in terms of waiting for Stephanie to get on board, the new city manager, that will shorten the amount of time that will be available for budget development. But I'm suggesting that should largely be a continuation of this year without the council to perhaps not consider significant changes as you go through that process, since this next year will be more of a transitional year. So that is in essence what we talked about at the Finance Committee.
Any questions for Bob?
Just that I'm really pleased that it seems to be an improving overall picture. And I think that we'll be pleased when we get to the end.
But as you pointed out too at the meeting, that we still do have a deficit. It's just not nearly as big a deficit.
It continues to shrink.
It's continuing to shrink, so that's the good news, but it doesn't, we aren't at a zero deficit situation yet. And the one other thing is that it's been really difficult to kind of do all of this without being able to close the books on the 2016-17 year because of gaps there. And so that's just, it's waiting to get that resolved so that we can get on with the current budgeting. So thank you for continuing that effort. Water and Wastewater Committee.
Hasn't met since the last council meeting.
All right. Revite Ed, I know they did meet, so would that be?
Yeah. We met.
Yeah. Who wants to?
Well, our next meeting is scheduled for March 8th, and at the March 8th meeting, there's only one item on the agenda, and that is going to be signage, and probably more specifically, the potential signage located on the Spare Time property, although not limited to just that subject. And the reason that we selected March 8th is because we have a Caltrans meeting on March 1st, and we're hoping to bring some relevant information to the March 8th meeting. Revite Ed is open to the public, and I think we're meeting about 4:30. I don't know the exact time.
Yeah, I believe it was 3:30. is what
3:30,
it's slated
okay.
for. And the more the merrier. If some folks,
Yes,
maybe have some ideas we don't have, so.
please come.
All right. And right now, the status of the vacancy ordinance is still
Does he
being
got
worked?
some direction? I think he hopes to bring it back, but he may still be fine tuning it. I don't know if he needed to check with Jim or not, or Bob.
I would expect that you'll probably see that back later in March.
Okay. Thank you. Ad hoc committees, Caltrans, we just heard that there will be a Caltrans meeting on March 1st.
That's correct.
And the focus of that is primarily the relinquishment
Yes,
schedule?
and relinquishment schedule in the next phase, and what we hope to be talking with Caltrans about is getting a community meeting together that would inform the community as to what this next phase will look like and what to expect from construction and what they're trying to do to minimize those impacts on the community.
That would be a very good idea to have a community meeting. Yeah. Okay.
On that note, when we had talked previously about a community meeting in regards to that, what month did we say would be a good month?
Well, probably the sooner the better, given the fact that construction, I think, is going to start about May. So it'll probably, if timing works right, I would suggest late April or late March or early April for the community.
It's out to bid now, isn't it, Bob?
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
think that's.
So with Stephanie not, our new city manager, not starting until March 15th.
15th.
And she'll have a lot on her plate. Could we set up a date, or could you set up a date so that we've got something calendared?
Certainly, but I'll have to get Caltrans, it probably will be
That's
set at
right,
that
okay.
Caltrans meeting.
Okay.
Okay, good. JPA feasibility study for the wastewater treatment plant?
Nothing there.
Nothing new. Little Lake Fire District, JPA.
We are going to meet on a Thursday, not tomorrow. So it probably will look like early March for that initial meeting.
Okay. And you're the representative there?
And
Okay.
Jerry.
Jerry.
Okay, good. Early March, okay. The other community boards and committees, Museum Advisory Board. Sabrina?
Yeah, we finally met the Museum Advisory Board, and I was pleased that Carrie Brown from the Board of Supervisors attended and promised us that she was going to be an active member at our meetings, and we voted in a new board. Rebecca Montez is the new chair for the advisory board, and I'm the vice chair for the advisory board. We have a lot of work to do, just the board itself, and we're going to revisit our bylaws and some of the other things that we need to get done. And I'm starting to feel like there's some good that's beginning to happen, that the communication between the advisory board and the county seems to be improving. Yes, yes, we had
Good news.
to squawk a bit, but they heard us.
And next
Yeah.
is also for you, the Willits Tourism Board.
Yeah, Tourism Board, there's a meeting, I can't remember the date, it's about a week and a half from now. But aside from the meeting, some things that are happening is I've been meeting with a lot of people in the community about different projects, because at our next meeting, the board will be selecting projects that they want to take on. And so I've been doing a lot of the research. For example, one of the projects that's been suggested is working with a partner who's already actively working on creating bike trails in Willits. So meeting up with them, because we don't want to reinvent something that, you know, we've got all these ideas, but there are people that are already in these little separate pockets that are working on projects. So right now I'm trying to put together and pull from the community, what are you passionate about, and how can we bring in that information and then pass it on to the group that will take that project on. So lots of that type of research happening. So I'm looking forward to telling you, hopefully, at the next meeting, like the projects that we've set up in the timeline. And then also tomorrow, Madge and I are meeting with the Mendocino County Tourism Board as well, I think at 10 a.m.
Yes.
I believe, because we want to better our partnership with the County Tourism Board as well.
Great. Okay, so moving on, council member reports and recommendations. Yes, Larry.
Bob has already taken my thunder on this one, but the town meeting is really, really important. And when Bob and I went and talked about the trees up and down the main street, I don't know how he felt about it, but I found a lot of people that were really not informed. And this, I can't stress how much that this town is going to go through in the next year or 2 years. And I don't think that the businesses are aware of how much that they're going to have to go through and how much that they're going to have to suffer, maybe. It's not, maybe not a nice word, but
Disruption.
the construction and I don't know what it's going to do, whether it's going to be 1 lane or 2 lanes that run from Highway 20 to the end of the city limits. But to do this is going to restrict the people that are going to be able to access down through town. And the people, this 4,000 or 5,000 people that live in Brook Trails, I'm sure are not going to try to come through town, but they're going to turn and go towards the high school and out the north end of it. And I just can't stress so much that they need this meeting and they need to truly understand what they're going to go through and how they're going to go through it. And the more we can help it, the better it will be. But, well, that's enough said about that. I mean, I just really can't stress it enough. I mean, anyhow, thank you.
All right, Jerry.
I just wanted
Very subtle.
I just wanted to thank Larry for being an advocate. When we were both on the Caltrans meeting, he made sure to advocate for the businesses in town, and he continues to do so. And so I really appreciate that with Larry, that he's a business owner on Main Street, and he makes that real for when he talked to Caltrans. So, and then the other thing I wanted to point out, just not getting into it, but Section 35703 of the Vehicle Code does allow for deliveries of supplies or things, even on a restricted weight street. You just have to take the shortest route there. That means you can't go down the length of a restricted street, but you can go from an unrestricted street, make your delivery, and then go back out. It's basically upon the driver of that delivery truck. Otherwise, you'd never be able to get that heavy item delivered to your business.
Okay.
So when people see that, that there's an overweight vehicle, and obviously if some overweight vehicle is driving down the road, that they need to take the most direct route, deliver, and then that's it, but they can't be using it just to traverse.
Okay, that's important.
So I thought I'd just point that out. I
Yeah.
mentioned to our police chief, so
Okay.
they can be aware of it.
Okay. Well, I have a couple items I wanted to just make sure they got stated publicly. One of them was that I was very honored, and our town was very honored to celebrate Edie's 110th birthday on February 5th. And I was able to deliver the proclamation to her, but it was extremely well attended, and she was very, very gracious and lovely. So that was fine. We also, several of us attended the swearing in of a new police officer about 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
Okay.
And it was the first time we saw Scott back here on the job. That was wonderful, and very nice to have a new officer on deck. Bob Peralt and I attended the REMIF meeting also several weeks ago. It was right after our last city council meeting, and they're going through quite a soul-searching process about the insurance, workers' compensation insurance, and how to provide that as efficiently and cost-effectively as we can, because we just have a consortium of a bunch of small jurisdictions here in the Northern California area that are self-insured, basically. And REMIF has been handling all the administration of that in-house, and it has just become no longer effective to do it. And we don't have a big enough pool to afford the administrative staff to do that. So the decision was made to go out to a third-party administrator. So that's going to be a transition in the Redwood Empire Municipal Insurance Fund. And there will be some other meetings on that coming up. And one other announcement I wanted to make is that on February 25th, a week from Sunday, Willits Economic Localization is hosting a town hall regarding how we can turn the passion of our citizens into profit for themselves and also to benefit our economy. So on Sunday the 25th at 4 o'clock over at the Willits Environmental Hub, we will have a speaker. Bob Peralt will be there, Sabrina will be there, representatives from EDFC and West Company, and several local businesses that can talk about how they got where they did and kind of what the obstacles are and how we as a community can encourage our business community to expand and grow economically. So I hope people can attend that on February 25th. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it'll be a 2-hour. We'll include a lot of audience chance to contribute their own ideas and ask questions as well. Enactment of ordinances.
Quick comment. I just wanted to state that I very much agree with Larry. And I felt like even as a council member that I was out of the loop because I've only been on the council a little over a year, and I asked our city manager and received the Willits Main Street Corridor Enhancement Plan, which I'm looking very much forward to reading over and getting a really good understanding of what was approved.
Wow.
And
I didn't get one of those either.
Well, we certainly have copies available.
yes, and I just want to make it known that I'm happy to, after I read this copy over closely, I'd be happy to share this, loan this copy out. And after reading through it, it's my hope that where I see things that I've heard from people that are of concern or impact, that Larry, that I would hope that we're setting up the one meeting and potentially March or early April, that maybe the council can take the lead in setting up some dates to address maybe not just one community meeting, but multiple community meetings, maybe to address this issue or this block or whatever the case may be, that it's not just like a one-time shot, but we have an ongoing conversation where many community members can come in and get involved. If we're talking about, for example, downtown, if you got a business downtown, like you said, you're worried about how are people gonna get access? What's the plan specifically for business? If you're a pedestrian, how are pedestrians gonna get around? If you're driving through town, are there days where there's gonna be alternate routes? Things like that. So I'd like to see us have multiple community meetings and for that conversation to continue. Thank you.
All right, so we are now moving to one of the last items on our agenda, but it's a fairly important one. Just getting my computer to go on. That is the enactment of review and possible action to approve the introduction of an amendment to the Willits Municipal Code chapter entitled Sewer.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll provide the staff report.
Thank you.
City staff is recommending that the council adopt significant changes to the city's sewer ordinance in order to meet 4 major objectives. One is to update the ordinance to adhere to the current requirements of the city's NPDES permit. And I know a lot of people hear acronyms and aren't sure what those are. The acronym stands for the National Pollution Discharge System. It is the permit that governs the operations of our wastewater treatment plant, because we discharge once water is treated and at certain times of the year into the receiving waters that are adjoining our treatment plant. Then it is to incorporate forthcoming federal pretreatment standards and to establish a sewer lateral program for implementation by the city. As I mentioned, we have an NPDES permit. It's issued by the California North Coast Regional Water Control Board, and as a condition of that permit, which is effective now, the city is required to show that the city, through its sewer ordinance, has the appropriate mechanism in place to control the sources of wastewater coming into the plant. And what are we really talking about? By sources, we're talking about those sources that are most likely attributable to industrial or commercial users that may cause upset to that plant or require or compromise the ability of the plant to process those water, the incoming water, and pass it through to the receiving waters. So that's what a large part of this change is about. And to initiate that process, the city staff did do a survey that provided of industrial users, that provided the city with information so that we could characterize the constituents that are going into the wastewater treatment plant and provide certain permits to ensure that the process at the plant is protected. Additionally, in 2016, the city was visited by a regulator from the State Water Board, as well as a consultant working in conjunction with the EPA. And the purpose of that visit was to discuss what type of pretreatment standards the federal government may have coming down the road, and that the city is likely to deal with. So you're not only dealing with the state water qualities requirements, but we're also dealing, some of these changes are being made in a proactive manner to address what we expect the federal government to do in a short period of time. These changes, both those that first of all are highlighted in your staff report and in the ordinance itself, those that are highlighted in yellow are the changes that are coming about as required by our NPDES permit, and are required to be, at least the ordinance needs to be in place by March 1st. That's at least the deadline that the permits sets for us. The highlights in the pink are those items which we anticipate that the federal government is going to want to see in our ordinance in the future. And we won't actually be implementing those provisions, but they'll be there at the time the federal government does require them to be in. That will negate having to come back with another major revision. In addition to that, there is at the tail end of the ordinance a section regarding the implementation of a lateral inspection program. I know that the council has discussed this in the past. The lateral inspection program would be done at certain times, and those times are identified in the report. Residences, or I should say property owners, would be responsible for upgrading those laterals as those inspections may require. The staff is in the process of putting together a $35,000 low-cost loan program that will be made available to eligible residents to repair their laterals. We're still working on that part of it. And lastly, the ordinance has been updated for grammatical or clerical corrections since it's been a long time since the ordinance has been addressed. I should say, relative to the cost for this implementation, the costs will be primarily associated with those that are required additional permits. These are most likely your industrial users, and there's a limited number of those. It may affect some commercial businesses, but the rates that you adjusted will not be impacted by this. So user costs will be used to develop a fee program that the council will review at a later date, because that can be adopted by separate resolution. There are alternatives available to the council. The council could choose not to adopt the ordinance at this time. That wouldn't be recommended, because we do have the requirement to have something in place by March 1st. We would then be out of compliance with our NPDES permit. The city could choose to only adopt those changes necessary to comply with the NPDES requirements at this time, and choose to incorporate the federal pre-treatment process at a later date. That would just require an additional major revision of the ordinance, second major revision. As I've said, the fiscal impact is minimal. Personnel impact would, again, be interdepartmental, and there would be some impacts, but we should be able to absorb them with the existing staff. That concludes my share of the report. We have Suzanne Lustis here, who's done a lot of work on putting this, and it's been a major piece of work, as you can tell. I should note that the attachments that you have include the NPDES permit in its entirety. It also includes the model ordinance that was suggested by the EPA, and finally the attachment number C is the ordinance that is under consideration this evening. So that concludes my remarks, and we are certainly available to answer clarifying questions.
Okay. Ron?
Yeah, I have two general questions. The first one, when you referred to the $35,000 fund, and you did say that staff is working on it, so it's not finished yet, but
Yes.
you might want to consider if this is going to be a one-time deal, that is just that amount of money is put into the fund and no more, and once it's gone, or if it's going to be, serving a purpose, if we want to consider, refunding the fund,
Yes.
keeping
If
it.
I could, the reason for that $35,000
Yeah.
figure, this came out of the Riverwatch
Right.
litigation. It was a term of the settlement, and we negotiated settlement with Riverwatch, and we got them down to the amount of $35,000. And so it's a fund for low interest or no interest loans of up to $2,500 per applicant. And so the council certainly has the ability to decide to fund that indefinitely, or if there's,
Yeah, I was aware of where, the nexus of the fund, and at the time, obviously, it was a punishment for us, But in retrospect, and in light of this, I think it's, might be a good idea to keep, because we're helping the infrastructure of our city, so I think, you may want to consider that. The other thing I have is, I was looking through this and trying to determine what happens if there is non-compliance. I was looking for some kind of penalties, and I know that's, I'm the penalty cop or something. And I noticed that down here in, sections, page 238 of 266, it looks like paragraph E is a revocation of the permit and termination of discharge, and I'm guessing that would be pretty much the penalty. It's not like anybody's going to be fined or anything like that. Is that correct?
No, that's, if you actually,
No, this is my 238, on here
Yeah.
it may not be
I
the
don't
same
have
as yours.
238
I think it's page
here.
35 of the ordinance.
It's page
Doug.
35.
Well, I have
Yeah.
21, actually. Page 21 is at the bottom of the page that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
There are
Huh.
actually a suite
Some-
of
Right there.
Series.
enforcement actions that can
Right.
be taken. Actually, there's one that I thought was interesting, and it probably was taken from the model ordinance, is the one where if you have a flagrant violator, there's actually a choice that they could end up in the newspaper as being noticed as a flagrant violator. But other than that, there is, you could revoke the permit, you could cause a cease and desist to be issued. There's even a provision for if I remember, a daily fine.
Yeah, I mean,
So I'm wondering if you have the right version now, because
Well, okay,
page
this,
21 at the bottom is,
well, this
that's
is,
an old-
this is
old
section,
version.
this is section 13.04.300 wastewater permits, if that helps you.
can you go to .360?
13.0,
Yeah, 13.04.
13.04.300, and underneath that would be paragraph A.
Is yours highlighted?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's in the yellow highlighted sections.
Okay, that's good.
But anyway, I mean, it looks to me, if that's the case, that, if someone is violating their permit, the revoking the permit would be the thing that would be done. Is that a
Yeah, I mean,
fairly
we
good?
can revoke the permit, we can basically ask them, however strongly we choose to stop discharging.
So what, that brings up the question that, let's say if we have a violator who doesn't comply and their permit is revoked, so what are the options? I mean, do they cease doing business generating the waste because they have no place to put it unless they hire a waste hauler?
Yeah, they can hire a waste hauler.
But is this a concern for the city? Because it seems to me that I mean, don't we have some kind of a responsibility to make sure that waste can be properly disposed of? And that's why we have a waste treatment plant. So if we close down a company's access to the waste treatment facility that the city owns, does that have the implication that, you know, if they refuse to, you know, they say, well, I'm not going to hire anybody, I'm just going
Well, we also have a responsibility to protect we also have a responsibility to protect everyone else's interests.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just trying to.
they have a choice, right, as to whether or not they want to treat the water to a level that it needs to be at to be fair to everyone else.
Right.
So, there's that.
Yeah, well, I'm not questioning the city's right to do that. I'm just looking a little beyond, unintended consequences kind of thing. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of, liability, responsibility, exposure that the city might have if we force someone to dump things in the sewer or something. I don't know. And you may not have the answer right now. I'm just.
There's the penalties and the remedies span about 4 pages. I think it's on page 33, 34, and 35 mainly. And they include criminal penalties, civil injunction, filing a lawsuit to enjoin certain activities, daily penalties. So there's a wide range of remedies, and I would assume we, select the appropriate one under the circumstances and not do the most drastic first. But we've got a wide range, and I think that's important, and it gives us choices to make.
But I guess I can make an assumption that none of these remedies would create an unsafe condition in town.
Obviously what we want to do is work with permittees to gain compliance.
Right.
And, the first in any kind of an enforcement program, what someone in my position or someone that I should so designate would do is usually take the enforcement action that is likely to gain compliance without compromising any other interests of the business or the city. So you're given a large range of penalties simply to be able to accomplish that. I understand where you're going. You're saying that, what if you issue a cease and desist order, and so this operator decides that rather than ceasing operations or ceasing and desisting, they're going to discharge someplace else.
Yeah.
That always that's a potential issue. Of course, if someone were to be found doing that, that would equate a whole additional suite of enforcement actions, including the criminal ones,
Right.
I would think. Right. So, but our point is to try and work with businesses to achieve compliance with the minimal amount of enforcement effort.
Drama. Yeah.
I think also, tell me if I'm wrong, Suzanne, but I think the language that we have in front of you is mostly from the EPA model ordinance.
Yeah.
It's not language that we just created at a
I
local
definitely didn't write it.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I'm not questioning the intent of the thing. I'm just I just have this crazy mind that looks at unintended consequences. That if we want to do something good, what happens down the road? What happens if? And are we covering that kind of stuff?
I think so. I think that's really what this is an attempt to do. It's really to expand upon what we already have in place and try and give those options. I think that's the intention of this.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess we can always tweak it as we go along if we find it necessary.
Yeah, I think so.
So I haven't opened the public hearing yet, and
Oh,
I'd
sorry.
like to do that. So is there anybody here who would like to speak to this item on our agenda? And if not, then we can continue any discussion and,
More question for Suzanne and Bob again. In the interest of continuing, I guess, being business friendly, any costs that we would come up with fees would just be cost recovery.
Yes, well, that's
So-
all we're permitted to do anyway, by
So-
law.
So when folks say, hey, I didn't have this fee before, it's like, hey, the feds are requiring this. It's not like we made it up to make money for the city. It's gonna be a straight shot as far as our time or whatever we need to do. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, and yeah, again, this is coming to us largely because it's a condition of our requirement that's very specific in our MPDES permit to protect the public health, and so that's why we have to do these things.
any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation on this ordinance.
Which would include, I think, the waiving of the formal reading of the ordinance.
Oh, yeah, and the way this item was listed was to approve introduction of an amendment, but does
Right.
that mean we also have we can go ahead and take action on it?
Yeah, we're going to introduce it. This is
Okay.
and we're going to waive the formal reading of it, and then it'll come on for a second reading in the next meeting.
Okay.
For adoption.
All right, so
And it would
the
become
motion is
effective.
what Jim just said, if that's clear enough. The motion would be to waive the first reading and introduce this
Correct.
proposed amendment.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading.
And I'll do so with the
waiver.
added thing of waiving the
Waiving the first
reading.
reading. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? If not, I think we should have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ostrowski?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Yep.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Sharp?
Yes. All right. And I confess that I've never been quite sure which goes under council member reports and which goes under good and welfare, but if there's any good and welfare that haven't been mentioned yet, now is the time.
I think just making sure that law enforcement feels very much appreciated for keeping the public safe in the recent incident. And I know that anytime something like that happens, there is impact to their good and welfare. And so I'd just like to send good healing thoughts to all parties involved in responding to that incident.
I will pass it on.
Yeah, thank you. And those officers that were in the line of duty here. And I think we can adjourn at 8:08. Meeting is adjourned.
Oh, boy.
Okay.